Hey, Zinnia, can you
Hi, good evening, Dan.
hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, John. I hear a sound coming out of your microphone or
You are getting a
beep.
buzz?
Yes, now we are.
I don't have time to change over.
Would you like to call in?
I don't have to, well, that would take as much time to change my equipment over. How bad?
Yeah, I can hear it. It's significant.
All right. I'll have to
We
log out
can
of this
wait
and change
a couple
equipment.
minutes.
Give me a couple minutes.
Sure.
How's that, Sonia? You're getting a buzz now?
No, your volume seems to be okay now.
Okay. I take it we're ready.
Ready when you are.
All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 regular meeting of the St. Helena Planning Commission. There's a bit I need to read before we get started, so here we go. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54-953 as amended by AB 361, which authorizes teleconference meetings under the Brown Act during certain proclaimed states of emergency. The Governor of California proclaimed a state of emergency related to COVID-19 on March 4th, 2020. This teleconference meeting is necessary so that the city can conduct essential business and is permitted under Government Code 54-953 in order to protect the public health and safety of attendees. Consistent with Government Code Section 54-953, this Planning Commission meeting will be held via teleconference only and will not physically be open to the public. Commission members and staff will teleconference into the meeting by audio and/or video. The meeting will be conducted via Zoom webinar. The Planning Commission meeting will be live streamed on Comcast Channel 28 and on the city's website, barring technical difficulties. Those members of the public wishing to participate must do so remotely via Zoom electronic meetings in the following ways: by either logging onto the Zoom link located on the meeting agenda and enter the meeting ID, or by calling a listed number and enter the meeting ID. Public comment for Planning Commission meetings will be accepted via email to publiccomment@cityofsthelena.org. All public comments must be emailed by 3 p.m. prior to the meeting. Emailed public comments will not be read out loud, but will be publicly available and attached to the online Planning Commission agenda. Ms. Gamero, do you have additional information?
Yes, I do, Chair Ponce. Let me share my screen. For members of the public who wish to participate by phone, you can do so by dialing 669-900-6833. At the prompt, you can enter the meeting ID 868-0376-1764. Press pound, and during public comment, you can press *9 to speak. That will be all, Chair Ponce.
Thank you. Commissioner Rothfeld. You appear to be on mute, Commissioner. Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will call this meeting to order. Secretary Gamero, if you take the roll, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Rothfeld,
Here.
Commissioner Segura,
Here.
Vice Chair Hale,
Here.
and Chair Ponce.
Here. Thank you. That takes us to item 3, public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address the commission on items of interest to the public that are not listed on the agenda. Because of restrictions imposed by the Brown Act, the commission may not engage in discussion nor take action on matters not described on the agenda. Ms. Gamero, do we have anybody that appears to wish to speak during public comment?
I do not see any members of the public who wish to speak at the moment.
All right, thank you. We'll go on to item 4 then. Consent items. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. We have only one item on consent this week, approval of the minutes of March 1st, 2022. Are there any members of the commission that wish to pull this item? I don't see any. Ms. Gamero, is there any members of the public that appears to wish to have this item pulled?
There are no hands raised at the moment, Chair Ponce.
Thank you. So a single motion on the consent calendar would be appropriate if someone cares to make it.
I move to approve the consent items on the agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Gamero, if you tally the votes, please.
Commissioner Segura,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hale,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rothfeld,
Yes.
Chair Ponce.
Yes. That takes us to item 5, public hearings. We have one public hearing tonight. a request by Truck Retail Corporation for approval of a use permit to allow St. Helena Cyclery to operate as Trek Bicycle, a formula business within the existing commercial space located at 1156 Main Street in the Central Business District. I will call the public hearing open and ask if there's any members of the commission that had any ex parte contact on this item. All right, I need to fess up. The current owner of St. Helena Cyclery contacted me a few weeks back, asking mainly process questions. You know, who do I need to talk to? What options are available? What does a formula business mean? And that was the sum of our conversation, but it did happen. Anyone else? No. All right. Then I need to ask for the staff report.
Excuse me, Chair
DeRosa.
Pont,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hale raised his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. I didn't see it.
That's
I'm working
okay.
on a smaller screen and your head is about that big. No, please.
Hey. No, I spoke to Jake Scheiderman also. He just asked if I had any questions. I had none. So it was a very cursory conversation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Raise both hands and wave. Never mind. Okay. Director DeRosa, again.
Yes, if we're ready to discuss this item, I'll introduce Ms. Gamero, who is the case planner for this item, and let her do her presentation now. Thank you.
I will be sharing a PowerPoint here. Let me pull it up. Perfect. You should see my screen now. Okay. St. Helena Cyclery is an independently owned business that has operated as a retail bicycle store since 1982. Trek Bicycle intends to continue operating the space as a bicycle store to provide bicycle retail sales, services, and rentals consistent with those provided by St. Helena Cyclery. The applicant is seeking approval of a use permit in order to allow Trek Bicycle to operate as a formula business within the existing commercial space. Although the existing bicycle store is a permitted use, the ownership change to a national company with standardized practices and branding qualifies as a formula business, which requires approval of a use permit. As set forth in the written proposal, Trek would employ 3 full-time and 3 part-time employees, positions which Trek has offered to existing St. Helena Cyclery employees. The floor area of the space is approximately 2,300 square feet and includes a retail sales floor, a front and back of house service area, storage area, an office/break room, fitting room, and a restroom. Trek is not proposing an increase in floor area or exterior changes, only interior improvements. The proposed hours and days of operation are Monday through Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The applicant's building is within the city's parking impact overlay district. As per the applicant's statements, 1156 Main provides 3 parking spaces located at the rear of the building, meeting the minimum parking requirements of 2 spaces, 1 parking space per 1,200 square feet of floor area. No parking spaces will be added or lost. Trek is also proposing to replace the existing St. Helena Cyclery sign with the standard Trek signage in the same location and size. A sign permit application must be approved prior to replacement of the signage. A condition of approval has been included in the attached resolution identifying the requirement for a sign permit. Staff has not identified any issues that require additional discussion. And as of the completion of the staff report, staff has received 21 letters of support related to this application. I would like to point out that requested by Chair Pont, there were 2 changes made to the resolution. One of them was adding condition of approval number 4, which states this use permit allows only the uses and activities as described in the narrative written description attached to this resolution approved on March 15, 2022. And the second condition of approval was amended to add the last sentence here in red that states the new signage size shall not increase beyond the size of the existing signage. This condition was amended as such to reflect what the applicant stated in the written statements that was provided regarding the size of the proposed signage. For the reasons stated in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to section 15301, class 1, which exempts the operation, leasing, or minor alteration of existing facilities, and accept the required findings and approve the attached resolution as amended, granting use permit for Trek Retail Corporation to operate as a formula business at 1156 Main Street. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. We have applicant representatives available for questions as well. Thank you, Chair Pont.
You're on mute,
Member of the
Chair
commission
Pont.
Yes, I was muted. Does anybody have any questions of staff at this time? I don't see any hands. Then we will proceed to the presentation by the applicant, if there is one. If the applicant cares to make a presentation, now's the time.
Hello, good evening. This is Greg Desmond.
Good evening.
And thank you to all the commissioners and staff for helping us get this in front of you and have an opportunity to chat about it tonight. There is no presentation from the applicant side. We think staff's done a great job of covering the scope of work that we're proposing. The only issue we have remaining is the addition, the last sentence on condition number 11. And that's something I'd like to have a conversation about if and when appropriate.
Well, now would be the appropriate time, Mr. Desmond, for you to present why there shouldn't be a restriction in the resolution that appears to be offered by the applicant in their letter to the city.
Well, unless are you referring to the project statement or some other? Basically, we're not analyzing, reviewing, or approving a sign permit at this time. So I don't want to place conditions on a sign that isn't in front of you, is my point. We're fully ready and capable of and prepared to submit for a sign permit, but that's going to be subsequent to the approval of this use permit.
That is indeed correct, but that staff report appears to say that you said you weren't going to increase the size of the sign, so it seemed appropriate to put that in the restrictions.
From my review of the project statement, there's signage is mentioned in 2 places, and in none of those places. Let me
read you page 26 of 54 under signage, which is from Trex. Trek intends to replace the existing signs for St. Helena Cyclery with our standard Trek signage with signs in the same locations and size. So I'm trying to figure out how that isn't an offer from the applicant to go with the same locations and size.
Well, perhaps that was back, I don't know, but perhaps that was back when they were going to do them both at the same time. Clearly, we're not looking at any sign information at this time, so I just don't think it's appropriate to mention any place any conditions on this project related to signs when we're not looking at any signs. Clearly, we're not going to propose, or we wouldn't be proposing something that wouldn't be allowable per the sign ordinance, but I don't want to be in a position where we're limiting ourselves or this client with any type of signage that would meet the requirements of the sign ordinance at the time in which they submit.
I can understand that, but it appears that the applicant made an offer. We're simply accepting said offer. And as you know, right now, our sign ordinance is sort of betwixt and between. You could come in for a sign request of 300 or 400 square feet, and that still be legal under our current sign ordinance.
But we're not doing that, and we're not looking at signs now. So that's my point. It's really pretty simple.
And I think so is just picking up what you offered. Yes, that Vice Chair.
I would tend to agree that there's adequate process in place to and an appropriate time to consider the sign permit. I don't see that it's correct to kind of at this point hobble future things. I mean, their only obligation is to submit an application that's within scope of our regulations. That we don't. It's not a free. We don't get a free swipe. They're not entitled, or we're not entitled to kind of just limit for the sake of limiting. And I think it's entirely appropriate that discussion happens when the sign permit is applied for, as any business would do.
All right. Anyone else have any comment on this particular part of the discussion? And we are, I'm afraid at this point, under discussion. Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
I agree that the signage can happen later. It doesn't, to me, need to be attached as a condition of approval at this time.
Anyone else?
I agree as well. I read it.
Before we move on. Commissioner Rothfeld, was that you?
Yes, I agree with Dan and Autumn as well. I'm understanding it the same way.
Okay, I would like to, before we move on then, read our definition of formula business. Formula business, not including formula restaurants which are prohibited, means a business which is required by contractual other arrangement to maintain any of the following standardized services, decor, uniforms, architecture, signs, or other similar features. This shall include and not be limited to retail sales and service, visitor accommodations, wholesale, and industrial operations. So I would like to point out that signs are included in our formula business definition. And several items such as decor have not been discussed here, nor were they discussed in the staff report. But signs is definitely an item that we include in our formula business definition. So I was simply taking up what they had offered, which was to not increase the size of the signs.
Since I'm a panelist, can I speak?
Who is that, please?
You don't recognize my voice. This is Jake.
If you want to say something, Jake, please.
I hear you about what you just read, but again, we're talking about something. I helped write the original sign ordinance myself back in the 90s, and it has a place where square footage appropriate to the size of the building. I mean, there's all kinds of different requirements that we have with the sign ordinance, design, size, everything like that, which can be taken care of in the appropriate time. I think our concern is that if I had an undersized sign, just if I had a poster board out in front there, you are now, you would theoretically be limiting the next owner to the size of my poster board. When the applicant comes to you for a sign permit request, that would be the time where you can determine what you want to see on the front of the building as per the guidelines of your sign permit and sign ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Scheiderman. Director DeRosa, you have a hand up.
Yes, thank you. What I would like to just share with the Planning Commission is that it is very typical for us as conditions of approval to require and remind an applicant that they still need to apply for a sign permit. So I didn't have full clarity in the discussion if you all were thinking of just completely removing that condition, because I would strongly recommend you don't, but I think you have the option to remove that last sentence that puts the restriction on the size and just requires that they apply for the permit and it comply with the municipal code. So I just wanted to make sure you didn't lose sight that it is a good thing to have that in the conditions, that they do need to apply for a sign permit to change their signage. Thank you.
And this is Greg Desmond, and as the applicant's representative, I fully appreciate that. And the only thing I'm concerned with is the last sentence in condition number 11. That's it. We fully intend to submit for a sign permit.
One more question of staff then before we go on with this. Director DeRosa, under our current sign ordinance, is there a limit on the size of the sign they can apply for?
Yeah, I haven't looked at those regulations recently, but there are for a fascia sign, which is, I believe, what they want to request. So I don't have any concerns about what they're going to propose.
All right, but my understanding of the ordinance as it stands, not as is to be modified, but as it stands, if it goes beyond administrative, there are no size limits.
There are size limits.
On the old one, Jake, but not on the new one.
May I pitch in? I am looking at the sign code, and anything over 10 square feet, which would be non-projecting identification sign on the primary frontage of the building or on a door or window, would need to go to Planning Commission for approval.
That's correct, but there's no limit on the size they can ask for, correct?
Correct, but that would be up to your discretion, up to
Yeah.
the Planning Commission discretion.
Yeah. That was the reason why I was suggesting we take up the applicant's offer. But if no one else cares to do that, I'm okay with striking out that last sentence under that condition, right? That's what we're talking about, just the last sentence?
That's what the applicant is interested in. Yes.
Well, I'm more interested in what the commission is interested at this point, Mr. Desmond.
Great.
Yes.
Yes, Vice Chair Hale.
My understanding is about my concern is the last sentence. I don't think we should be.
Okay. Then any motion someone makes would include removing that
Right.
part of the addition. All right. Now with that, I need to switch gears here and ask for public testimony. If there are any members of the public who wish to testify on this item one way or the other. Ms. Gamero, do we have anyone out there who wishes to say something on this project?
I am looking at the participants, and nobody seems to have their hand up, Chair Pont.
Okay. Okay, in which case I will close the public testimony and close the hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Is there any members of the commission that wants to say anything additional about this project? I do not see any hands. then a motion would be appropriate before we get down to that. If one is going to make the motion as recommended by staff, please include wording about the attached resolution, if you would please, and also say as amended with the exclusion of the sentence on the size of the sign. Oh, thank you, Ms. Guerrero. You notice the wording on number 2 has changed a little bit to, rather than a resolution, it speaks about the attached resolution. So if there's no further discussion or comment, a motion would be appropriate if someone cares to make it.
I'll make a motion.
Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
I move that the Planning Commission determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to section 15301 class 1, which exempts the operation, leasing, or minor alteration of existing facilities, and accept the required findings and approve the attached resolution as amended, granting use permit to Trek Retail Corporation to operate as a formula business at 1156 Main Street, with the following amendment to condition of approval number 11, removing the last sentence that says the new signage size shall not increase beyond the size of the existing signage.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hale. Ms. Gamero, could you tally the votes, please?
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hale,
Yes.
Commissioner Segura,
Yes.
Commissioner Rothfeld,
Yes.
and Chair Pond.
Yes. Thank you. That concludes this item and takes us to number 6, scheduled items, which there are none.
Thank you.
Good night, Jake. And we're now to item 7, department reports. Director DeRosa, do we have a report tonight? Good news, I hope.
Well, we continue to move right along with the housing element, and just a friendly reminder to the public, if anyone's listening, that we have our 3rd public workshop is tomorrow at 6 o'clock on Zoom on affirmatively furthering fair housing, which is about gathering input on how to increase opportunities and reduce segregation as it relates to housing in the community. So a whole new housing element topic for this cycle. And so we are hoping that we get a very good, robust turnout at that tomorrow. And also, I believe the council very soon will be talking about a time schedule to return to live meetings. So of course, as your liaison, I will keep you apprised if I know of any upcoming dates where that may be realized. But I know it's at least 2 months out. I can tell you that for sure. So, and that's it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to, unless anyone has any questions of Director DeRosa? Seeing none, that takes us to item 8, agenda forecast. As always, there is a part of the city website that you see the link listed under agenda forecast. That will tell you projects that are in process. This is also the time for any commissioner to request an item on a future agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to make such a request? Seeing no hands, that takes us to item 9, which is adjournment, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.